Hello, this is the training for final exam proctors at Research Triangle High School for the 2013 final exam. First, want to thank you for volunteering your time to help us with this. Without you, it would not be possible. We really appreciate everything you're doing for us. There are 10 main proctor responsibilities. We're going to spend a little bit of time on each of them. The first responsibility is to read the North Carolina Testing Code of Ethics. That's on pages 10 to 13 of the Proctor's Guide, and the Proctor's Guide was linked in the email that contained the link to this video. Second responsibility is to maintain test security at all times. So only students are allowed to read test items. The exception is there's some students that have a read aloud accommodation, but that would be in a separate setting, and you would be aware of that, and it would be the testing administrator, which is a teacher, that's doing the reading aloud. So you should never have to read a question aloud to a student. Discussing exam content is prohibited. Students may not take test books or answer sheets from the test room, so if they leave, their materials need to stay in the room. Only teachers can transport the test books or answer sheets. Proctors may not be alone with secure test materials. You'll always be in a room with a teacher administrator. Proctors may not help code answer sheets. We won't ask you to. Proctors may not help students answer questions. So if students have a question about one of the questions on the test, you can tell them, I can't answer that, and then call over the test administrator. Next responsibility is ensuring appropriate physical conditions of the room. We want the rooms to be quiet, like totally quiet, orderly, so students are in their seats, comfortable, and that's mostly like the temperature, kind of the environmental settings of the room should be the same as they have been all year. And big one is no devices. So student phones will be collected at the beginning of a test period, and they're not allowed to have computers or anything. All of our tests are paper pencil this year. Also, this applies to the teacher administrators and the proctors, so none of us can have any phones out ever during any of these test administrations. So we won't collect your phones, but they need to be turned off for the entire test time. And like I said, no teachers, no students, no proctors are allowed to look at a phone for the entire time of the test periods. And I know that that's annoying or maybe frustrating, but I appreciate your compliance with it. Next responsibility is to help distribute materials. Students, depending on the test, may receive a test booklet, answer sheets, blank paper or graph paper, and in math they might have their calculator, which the teacher administrator will clear at the beginning of the test period. Students should provide their own pencils. Not all of them will, and we'll have some pencils for them. Aside from those things, students should have nothing else out on their desks or their tables. If they have their bags with them, they can just put them at the side of the room. Next responsibility is to ensure that test administration procedures are followed. And that might be to help students find the correct spot to follow along while the test administrator is reading directions. Also just walking frequently and quietly through the room. Making sure students are working on the correct section of an exam. So if we've moved on from a previous section and you see the student is still in that previous section, telling the student to move on and telling the test administrator also. And please do not assist with questions. So again, if a student asks a question, tell them you cannot answer, and then tell the test administrator. Assist students with emergencies or restroom breaks. So students must remain in the room unless there's an emergency. And we want as little disturbance as possible overall. Restroom breaks are okay if a student says they need to go to the restroom. We're not going to question that, but it needs to be one at a time. Their materials need to be secured while they leave the room, and that means that their answer sheet needs to be closed inside their test booklet, and it needs to stay inside the room as they leave, so that none of their answers should be showing. The time that they leave the room, the time that they come back in, is going to be noted by the test administrator. That's the teacher in the room. monitor students. So this is the one that's really what you're going to be doing for most of the time. You're going to scan students, make sure that they're following directions, performing required tasks, and are not sharing responses. A good way to keep on top of that is to walk frequently and quietly through the room. So like I said, we can't have phones. And for these, the state administered tests, which are the ones that we need proctors for, none of us can be doing anything besides monitoring students during the test. So we can't read books, we can't be writing, we can't be on the computer, none of those things. And I know that that's a little bit painful, but we really, again, appreciate you doing it for us. And I think the walking frequently and quietly through the room might be the only thing that will keep us awake. So that hopefully will help. Please do not read questions to students. Help them with the answers. Can't translate questions if they ask for it in a different language, or provide synonyms or meanings of words. So if they say, I don't know what this word means, you just have to say, I'm sorry, I can't help. Next responsibility is to follow procedures for accommodations. Some of our students with accommodations will be in a separate setting, and in separate settings we do need a proctor. So some of you might be proctoring in a room where there's a test administrator and maybe only one or two other students. And it seems silly, but we need, for state tests, we do need the test administrator and a proctor in that room. The test administrator is going to review with you all the accommodations that are present in the room and how it might differ from normal administration. So that should all be made clear to you, so that you can just make sure that you follow the procedures for that. We don't have any that are, there are some that are read aloud, some students are separate settings, some might write in their book. That's one that we have several students that so they don't use the bubble sheet. Next responsibility is to report any testing irregularities, and that would be things like if test materials are missing, if test materials are left unattended, like without a test administrator present, if a teacher left, student cheating by if they're copying or using a cheat sheet or asking others for information. Those would be reported to the testing coordinator, who is me, Laura Pacifica. I won't be in any of the test rooms. I'm going to be out just kind of overseeing things, and so proctors could leave the room if there's something that needs to be conveyed to the test coordinator immediately. Next responsibility is to maintain student confidentiality. Please do not share any personal information about students, and any of the information about individual students that you may become aware of as a result of serving in this capacity as a proctor is considered confidential information. Again, we want to thank you for all you do for our school. Most of you, I think all of you for sure, give to our school in so many ways, and this is just one more way. And this one is big because we know that your time is valuable, and I know it's going to seem like, oh man, I'm just going and standing in a room for 3 hours, but really it makes all of this possible, and this is a big step for our students having their first end of course exams in high school, and so we know that you're going to smooth that process for us and help it run really well, and we appreciate it so much. So thank you again, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.